And speaking of intelligence agencies content, do you want to talk about your spat you have going on with the New York Times right now, Taylor?
Yeah, sure. I'll talk about what happened with the New York Times. So basically, and again, I am not making any assumptions about anything because I really don't know if they plagiarized or not. But basically, I wrote an article that circulated not too great, but pretty well throughout independent media. It was the only article that was basically a collection of all of the 2020 presidential candidate statements on Julian Assange, on a free press, also Chelsea Manning. I just did a lot of research and I looked for reputable sources where they kind of spoke about Assange and addressed their feelings about him and how they would handle him if they were to become president, and also just their perspectives on WikiLeaks and that type of journalism in general. So I was the only one to have this article out. I published it, the first version, back in June 28th, actually, and that's significant because that was the second day of the first round of the Democratic primary presidential debates. So that was the first version, and then that was Andrew's birthday also. And I then, kind of touched up the article and I created a new version of it August 28th. So just very recently, I kind of re-edited that and added more to it. And I continue to do that as we learn more about the candidates, as more people enter the race and as people exit the race. I always try to keep it updated. Well, the other day, basically, I was just looking on Twitter and I was tagged in a post. And this post was an article about the presidential candidates and their perspectives on Julian Assange and the espionage charges in particular. And at first I thought it was my article, but it wasn't. It was one that was written by the New York Times. However, it was remarkably similar to mine in that the structure and format was the same. It's not word for word the same, but it's basically the same idea. So it was just seeing that was shocking to me because I would not expect them to, number one, even cover this issue. I'm glad that they did. I want the mainstream media to be talking about this. They did a bad job, however, and I addressed that in a video that I posted earlier today. I encourage you to watch it, not right now, but later. Not now, but I addressed all of my concerns about their article. And basically, I was not happy at first. I felt like my original idea was, perhaps stolen. It could have not been. I mean, they could have really just, come up with this idea on their own and just not research what was already out there at first. But if you did type in your search engine, Assange in the 2020 presidential candidates, my article is the first thing to pop up. I still believe that it is, to this day, the first thing that will show up. Now, of course, we're, a small organization. Action for Assange is where the article is posted. Not many people are seeing it. It's very small, but they could have seen that and just realized that I wouldn't make a fuss about it and that nobody would pay attention. So they just kind of took the idea. And I am absolutely just speculating at this point. However, I
Can
did call them. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, can I jump in because I covered your article through Action for Assange, the updated one that included the Green Party candidates and whatnot, and Adam Kokesh, and when this happened, I went and I looked at that New York Times article, and you're right. Like I described it as if somebody was trying to cook like a reduction sauce, but did a terrible job and then served it anyway. One of the quotes that he uses for a presidential candidate is just the word no. That's it. Like, that's
Exactly. It's
not
not
even
thorough. And I
huh?
made the point, it's not thorough at all. And I make the point in the video too that they don't even include all the candidates. They're so lazy that they pre-select which ones they think are more important than the others. So they're basically deciding for everybody who they think they should, care about, or who they should potentially think about voting for. For me, I covered everybody because I felt that was the fair and appropriate thing to do. They did not do that. And I don't want to get too much into it because I could be here forever talking about it. But I was just very unhappy to see that. If they would have done a good job and if they would have done a very thorough report and really asked these candidates like hard pressing questions and have done a good report on this, and did their journalistic, duty to hold these people accountable for previous statements they've made and their current stance on Assange and the espionage charges, I would be very happy with that article. Go ahead.
The two things with this, above and beyond anything, is one of them, it's getting ahead of a story. It's getting an article written on the back end of a news website, of a legitimate news website, that will allow other websites to source that information to get specifically how those candidates want those words crafted when they are released. So that's kind of just point one, is that's like a behind the scenes propaganda thing, because I don't think CNN even put it like super accessible on their website. But the other part, and this kind of goes back to the whole, we live in a surveillance state, at least in my opinion. About a week ago, we had started circulating this article through different independent media sources to try to get them to run it, to try to have them use this as some kind of source to build their own or what have you. And we reached out to a few different ones that aren't mainstream media sources, and then this pops up. So to me, that's kind of, hey, like, you're being watched. Like, they're looking at the actions that you're taking, they're seeing what information you're trying to get out and spinning it and putting it out their own way to try to get ahead of some type of story, or when it becomes a larger story, already have this information out to push these other content pieces down.
That's a good point. And also, let's remember, our website started to have this weird malfunction about
yeah.
show. Remember, guys? And we were like, what is this? We were so confused, and we were contacting the original person who gave us this website, saying who I believe is, would know how to fix this issue. And that individual was even confused as to exactly what really was going on. But yeah, the timing and all of it's very weird. I did call the New York Times, and Steve thinks it's very funny because in the video, I say that I left a calm message. I did. And I did leave a very calm message, and I told them to call me back. Of course, they did not call me back. But I'm going to keep pressing them on this because he knows
I'm sorry, dude. I am. It's just
so mad. Andrew was the first person I called, and I was furious. And then Steve heard everything that I had to say earlier today, because I was not happy. So they know that this was something that really sparked a lot of emotions in me. And it may sound like I'm overreacting, but I put so much hard work into this. Like, I put hours upon hours of work in this, and this was something that it was like one of my passion pieces. And to just have the New York Times do a half-assed job, and then this get seen as.
Well, here's the thing: when you publish through small outlets, when you put your content out through a source that is 100% disconnected from the six media company apparatus, you have very little recourse for when your work gets ripped off, because everyone has the same access to see it. Any journalist who's even a hack will be like, okay, let me see how many other people have written this story and what, let me see what the ones who've gotten the most attention, how they framed it, because maybe I'll rip that off because I'm a hack, or maybe I'm actually trying to do my job and I'm going to present this story and frame it in the way that I think it should be framed and not what's getting the most clicks. And you're gonna see your article, as you said, when that search comes up. So unless that's what it's hard to fight back against that, because it's the New York Times. They have this the statement that oh, we had this questionnaire come out way back in. The questionnaire is vague. You're muted.
Exactly. Yeah. Here they say that they had this questionnaire out in June. They started asking the candidates about these espionage charges, but they waited till September 10th to publish the damn article. That doesn't even make any sense. Why would you wait so long? Why would you wait? You're the New York Times. You have access to all these people.
Well, yeah, and when it was, we've had a few people drop out. It's slightly, marginally less of a clown car shit show, but not, really. And at the time when they passed out the questionnaire and when they got the information back, that would have been a perfect time to do it, because if they passed the questionnaire, what'd they say, in April is when they sent it out or something like that?
They said they sent it out in June, which is when the
Or in
first
June,
version
yeah.
was
So
published.
Assange had already been arrested at that point. Every presidential candidate should have at least had a position on it, and that would have been something that people needed to know when they got the information, not a month or 2 months after your article came out with much more detailed information and necessary corrections. And yeah, no, it seems at best unlikely that that writer would not have seen it, and it seems like lazy journalism by a very large outlet that could always say, "Oh, I never saw that. I just had this thing that I had to write, and it's a thing that we should be talking about."
Exactly. And when I actually, and also for everybody that's like watching, like, retweet this out. I hate to do that, but like tweet this out, make some noise about it, because if they're going to do this they've done it before to people, but if they're going to do this to me, and I've said, I am nobody from Ohio. That's who I am. I'm no one from Ohio. Like, if they're going to, this is going to continually happen, and they're going to try to take over independent media.
And I agree. Even if this person had no idea about your article, they still did a half-assed job. Like you said, they didn't include all the candidates. Tulsi Gabbard had, like you said in your video, 2 lines, if that, and she's the most outspoken of all the candidates on Julian Assange, and and what the case means to her as a presidential candidate, and what she would do as president. So it's a very cheap knockoff of your well-researched article, and I think that's in itself worth making noise about. Regardless, like you said, it's hard to prove whether this person knew about your article or not. I think ethically, it's not an ideal situation for them to be copying and not researching to see if somebody has done this article. So
yeah, exactly. I really appreciate the support from everybody too. I'm really grateful for that. Also too, some people were telling me today, and everybody has a right to their opinion. Some people said, Taylor, we actually really do disagree with you, and we do not feel that it was plagiarism. It could very well not be. I mean, they could have not known. However, plagiarism is copying an original idea. I did contact an attorney who is a media law attorney, an expert in this. This is what he has practiced. And I sent him both articles. I told him the situation, and he got back to me, and he said it's not a violation of any copyright. There's no copyright infringement because it's not word for word. But he said there is a legitimate question of, is this plagiarism? So I just want to make that clear for those who were saying that it wasn't plagiarism. I went to an expert in this, and they said that yes, it is. But they would have to, of course, prove that. And that is not something that's very easy at all. So yeah, I just appreciate the support from everybody. And I wish that the New York Times would have done that article justice. It's an important piece that needs to get out to the masses and for people to see this on a greater scale. And unfortunately, fortunately, number one, they will be able to see it. However, they are not going to see a version that is thorough and that includes everything that they need to know. They have a much watered down version.
Well,
of my article.
That's the dangerous part. That's what they did is remove all of the factual information that you had in your article, and they just left it at what this candidate said with zero framing around it and no substance to it whatsoever. And it's not lazy, it's disingenuous, it's deceptive, and it's part of an ongoing effort to manufacture confusion around Julian Assange, to guarantee that the image that people have of him is purely negative, whether it's about his personality or his hygiene or who he may have or may not have hung out with, or but all of that. So I mean, it's more nefarious when it's presented as empty as that was in the New York Times. And you're right, though. People are going to see that, and that's going to help shape their picture in their mind when someone brings up Julian Assange. And people should have the exact same ability to see your work. But by the nature of censorship algorithms, it's probably going to happen a little bit less.
So I think it was also maybe a way, say if they did see this article, it was maybe a way to kind of like have their version be the one that's noticed, the much watered down version, because they clearly have an agenda. And like Christy was saying too, I made mention in the video that Tulsi Gabbard, who's been the most outspoken advocate for Julian Assange, had 2 sentences because they don't want people to hear what she had to say about Assange. They don't want people to know that. So they put this very brief 2 sentences underneath her name. Yet Joe Biden, everybody who had a negative thing to say, had a much longer section.
And they didn't reference independent media at all. Like for the Marianne Williams thing, they didn't bring up anything about her
Jimmy
being
Dore.
on Jimmy Dore's show and being
No, they didn't. Exactly. No, they would never do that. But Jimmy Dore was the first one. I could say that with almost absolute certainty that he was the first person to question her about Julian Assange, and he did a fantastic job with that. And I sourced that in my article, and I put the original link to the source so everybody could watch the interview, because he does a great job, and you really do get a feel for how she feels about Julian Assange and whistleblowers in general. So I see that, Steve, I know you have a question for us in the chat, so I'll hand it over to you now. But thank you everybody for supporting me.
Because this relates directly to what you were just talking about. Because Tulsi Gabbard has these views, because she's had the most to say, because the New York Times limited her comments on Julian Assange to 2 sentences, and because she got cheated out of tomorrow's debate, do you think that will be the night that they ask a Julian Assange question on the Democratic debate stage?
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. If they do, that will be, first of all, I hope that they do. I want them to, because, and that's why I wrote this article to begin with, because I knew they weren't going to address it, and I wanted them to. I hope that they do. If they do, that would point to such complicity between the mainstream media and,
because nobody else is going to say anything nice about him.
No.
Nobody else.
Yep, not even Sanders. Sanders will say, "Oh, something, free speech."
I don't know if they want to give Julian Assange that much publicity, but I think, I don't know. I think they're dumb enough to do it. I think they're dumb enough to do it and make it so obvious that they took Tulsi off the stage and then asked the question.
God, I hope so. And just for the record, we've tried to get Tulsi on this show for almost a month. So just to put that out there, I was trying to get her on this stream tonight to actually just talk the truth about 9/11. So just that way, that's on record. What were you saying, Steve?
Oh no, I was just wondering if the chat had an answer yet, but I don't see one. I just thought of that question too, Taylor. As you guys were talking about this, I was like, son of a bitch. If they were going to do it, what better time than at the debate that they screwed her out of? Because yeah, you're absolutely right, Andrew. Bernie Sanders is not going to go to bat for Julian Assange. He will maybe grumble something about the Trump administration doesn't get to say what is and isn't free speech, journalism, like something like that. But that'll be the extent of it, and there will be nothing of substance at all about the person Julian Assange, who is being slowly tortured to death in Belmarsh prison while we're doing this vigil.